It was a quiet night in a small town far from the city lights. The streets were almost empty, and the sound of crickets filled the air. John, a young mechanic who worked at the old auto shop near the highway, was walking home after a long day. He carried his bag of tools on his shoulder and looked up at the dark, cloudy sky. There was no moon and the air smelled of rain. John liked quiet nights like this. He always said they helped him forget about his tired body and noisy thoughts. He lived alone in a small house near the forest where few people ever went. It was peaceful. Until that night. As John walked past the old gas station, he heard something. It was soft at first, like footsteps, but fast, light and uneven, as if someone was running in fear. He stopped and turned his head, his eyes trying to see through the darkness. The sound came closer. Then from behind a broken fence, a small figure ran out and stumbled into the road. It was a girl, no, not just a girl. She looked strange even from a distance. Her hair glowed faintly, and her skin had a silvery shine like the reflection of stars. Before John could move or speak, she ran straight toward him and hid behind his back. He froze, his mind blank. He could feel her trembling hands clutching his jacket. She was breathing fast, almost gasping. "Please," she whispered in a shaky voice. "Don't let them take me." Her voice was soft but full of fear. John turned slowly. The girl's big blue eyes looked up at him, glowing faintly as if light lived inside them. Her face was pale and wet with tears. She looked so human and yet... "Not quite. Who are you?" John asked quietly. She didn't answer. She only looked around, her body shaking harder. Then John saw something strange in the distance. Bright lights moving through the trees. Not car lights. They were white, sharp, and silent, almost floating. The girl grabbed his arm tightly. "They're coming," she whispered. "Please, hide me." John didn't understand what was happening, but something inside him said she was in real danger. Without another word, he nodded and guided her toward the alley beside the gas station. They crouched behind an old truck hidden in the dark. The strange lights grew brighter. John peeked out and saw two tall men walking down the road. They were dressed in black suits, but their movements were too stiff, too smooth. Their faces looked normal, but their eyes glowed red like small lasers scanning the ground. "They went this way," one of them said in a cold, emotionless tone. "Find her!" John's heart pounded. He looked at the girl. She was crying silently, pressing her hands against her mouth to stop any sound. She looked terrified, like someone who had run for her life for a very long time. The two men stopped near the truck. John held his breath. One of them raised a small device. It beeped, flashing red. "She's close," the man said. John knew they were seconds away from being found. He had no weapon, no plan, only instinct. He took a deep breath, then threw his wrench across the street. It hit a trash can with a loud crash. The sound made the men turn instantly. "Over there," one shouted, running toward the noise. John grabbed the girl's hand. "Come on," he whispered. They ran quietly down the alley, through a broken fence, and into the back roads that led to John's workshop. When they reached the old metal door, John unlocked it quickly and let her inside. The place was filled with engines, tools, and spare parts. The girl looked around, confused but calmer now. John locked the door and turned to her. "Okay," he said softly. "You're safe here for now." "Who are they?" "What do they want from you?" The girl didn't speak right away. She looked down, her glowing eyes dimming a little. "They're not from here," she said finally. "And neither am I." John stared at her. "You mean, you're..." She nodded slowly. "I'm not human." The room fell silent. Only the sound of rain tapping on the roof filled the air. John didn't know what to say. His heart was still racing, but when he looked at her again, he didn't see a monster. He saw a scared child, lost, alone, and hunted. "Why were they chasing you?" he asked softly. Tears rolled down her cheeks again. "Because I ran away," she whispered. "And because I know something they don't want anyone to know." John wanted to ask more, but she suddenly pressed a finger to her lips. "They can hear," she said quietly. "They always hear." Outside, faint red lights moved across the night sky, searching. John took a deep breath. Whatever she was, whatever was chasing her, he knew one thing for sure: she needed help. And for some reason he couldn't walk away. The rain grew heavier that night. It tapped on the metal roof of John's workshop like 1,000 small fingers. The lights flickered softly as thunder rolled far in the distance. Inside, the air was filled with silence and tension. The strange girl sat quietly on a stool. her eyes fixed on the floor, her hands still trembling slightly. John stood near his workbench, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Only minutes ago, his night had been normal. Now there was an alien girl sitting in his shop, hiding from men with glowing red eyes. It felt unreal, like a dream he couldn't wake up from. He cleared his throat gently. "You can relax now. They're gone, at least for now." The girl looked up. Her blue eyes shimmered faintly even in the dim light. "They never stop," she said softly. "They will come again," John frowned. "Who are they? And who are you, really?" There was a long pause. Then she whispered, "My name is Lyra." John repeated it slowly. Lyra. The name sounded strange but gentle, like something from a song. Lyra nodded. She looked small and fragile, but there was something deep in her eyes, something that told John she had seen more than most people ever would. He walked closer and handed her a towel. "You're soaked. Dry yourself before you catch a cold." Lyra took the towel carefully, as if she wasn't used to being treated kindly. "Thank you," she said in a soft voice. John smiled slightly. "That's what humans do," he replied. Lyra looked at him with curiosity. "Humans?" She repeated the word slowly, as if it was new to her tongue. "You are kinder than I was told." John raised an eyebrow. "Told by who?" She hesitated. Her hands tightened on the towel. "By them," she said quietly. "The ones who destroyed my home." John's chest tightened. "Destroyed your home? You mean your planet?" Lyra nodded slowly. Her eyes glowed brighter for a second, and a tear rolled down her cheek. "It used to be full of light," she whispered. "Blue oceans, silver skies, tall crystal towers that shined like stars. We were peaceful once, but then came war and darkness." John listened in silence. The way she spoke, the sadness in her voice, and it didn't sound like a lie. "They wanted to make us stronger," Lyra continued. "They took people, changed them, made them into soldiers, machines. I was one of them, an experiment." Her voice broke a little. "But I escaped. I couldn't let them use me to hurt others." John took a step closer, unsure what to say. "You were changed?" Lyra nodded. "Part of me is not what I was born with. They called it the light core. It lets me heal, move faster, and survive in places where no one else can. But it also makes me easy to track." John looked around nervously, glancing at the small windows. "So they can find you again?" "Yes," she said quietly. "If I stay too long in one place, they will." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The sound of the rain filled the silence again. Then John said, "You can stay here tonight. It's safe, mostly. Tomorrow we'll figure something out." Lyra looked at him, surprised. "You would help me, even though you don't know me?" John shrugged lightly. "You ran to me for help. That means something." Lyra's eyes softened. For the first time, a small, shy smile appeared on her face. It was the kind of smile that carried both hope and pain. "You remind me of someone," she said quietly. "Someone from home." John tried to smile back, but his mind was full of questions. Who were these red-eyed hunters? Why did they want her? And how far would they go to find her? He walked to the door and checked the locks again, then turned off the main lights, leaving only a small lamp on the bench. "You can rest there," he said, pointing to a small couch covered with old blankets. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then nodded. She lay down slowly, pulling the blanket around her. "Thank you, John," she whispered. He stopped, surprised that she remembered his name. "You heard me say it?" She smiled faintly. "I can hear more than most humans think." John chuckled softly. "That's good to know." He sat back in his chair, watching her as her eyes began to close. The faint blue glow under her skin dimmed as she fell asleep. She looked peaceful now, almost human. Outside, thunder rolled again and the strange white lights passed through the clouds. Far, but still searching. John didn't sleep that night. He sat quietly, staring at the rain running down the window. He had no idea why he was helping her or what danger he was bringing upon himself. But deep down he felt something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. Somewhere in his heart he knew. This girl wasn't here by accident. And whatever her secret was, it would change everything. Morning came quietly, but the world around John's small workshop didn't feel peaceful anymore. The air was heavy, the sky dull and gray. It was the kind of morning that felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. John hadn't slept at all. He sat in his chair near the door, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold hours ago. His eyes kept drifting to Lyra, who was still resting on the couch under the old blanket. Her breathing was slow and steady now, but faint blue light pulsed softly under her skin, like a heartbeat made of starlight. He whispered to himself, "Who are you really, Lyra?" As if hearing him, she stirred and slowly opened her eyes. The glow in them returned, calm, gentle, and a little sad. "You didn't sleep," she said softly. John gave a tired smile. "Didn't feel like it. I kept thinking about what you said, about those people hunting you." Lyra sat up and looked toward the window. "They are not people," she said in a quiet, distant voice. "Not anymore," John frowned. "Then what are they?" "They were soldiers once," Lyra explained. "Like me. But they let the light core take control. It changed their hearts, their minds. They became something else, machines wearing human skin." She paused. "They are called the Watchers now. They don't feel, they don't stop. They only obey." John's stomach twisted. "And they're after you because you escaped?" Lyra nodded. "They think I'm broken. But I'm not. I just remembered what kindness feels like." There was silence between them for a moment. The rain from last night had stopped, leaving the ground wet and shining under the pale light. John stood up and walked to his toolbox. "If they're machines," he said, "then maybe they can be slowed down." He began searching for something useful. Wires, metal rods, old batteries. "I might not be a soldier, but I can make a few surprises for them." Lyra watched him, curious. "You would risk your life for me?" John smiled faintly. "Maybe I'm just bad at watching people suffer." She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "That's what makes you human." Before John could reply, the workshop lights flickered. Once, then twice. A low humming sound filled the air like a distant engine. Lyra stood up instantly. "They've found us," she said, fear in her voice. John froze. "Already?" "They track energy from my light core," she explained quickly. "Every time I stay in one place too long, the signal grows stronger." The humming grew louder. Outside, through the fogged window, John saw the same white lights from the night before, moving slowly, scanning the streets. "Back door," John whispered. He grabbed his coat and a small bag with tools. "We need to move." Lyra followed him silently, clutching the edge of the blanket around her shoulders. Her eyes darted toward the window. "They're getting closer." John opened the back door carefully, peeking outside. The alley was empty, but the strange hum echoed from somewhere nearby. He motioned for her to follow. They slipped into the narrow path behind the workshop, stepping carefully over puddles. They ran past old cars and piles of junk metal. The air smelled of oil and rain. John's heart pounded in his chest, louder with every step. Then from behind, a voice called out, cold and sharp, "Stop! You can't hide her." John turned. One of the Watchers stood at the end of the alley. His face looked human, but his eyes glowed bright red. His skin was too smooth, too pale, and his voice sounded hollow. Lyra gasped and hid behind John again, just like that first night. John raised his wrench like a weapon, though he knew it wouldn't do much. "Leave her alone," he said, trying to sound brave. The Watcher tilted his head slightly. "She is property. She belongs to the Makers." "She's not property," John growled. "She's alive." The Watcher took a step closer. "You are human. You cannot protect her." John didn't move. His grip tightened on the wrench. "Watch me." Before the Watcher could respond, Lyra stepped forward. Her blue eyes glowed brighter than ever. "Stay back," she said firmly. For a second, the Watcher hesitated, then reached out his hand. A beam of red light shot toward her, but Lyra raised her palm and the air around her shimmered. The light scattered like dust. John stumbled back amazed. "What was that?" Lyra's voice shook slightly. "The last of my power. It won't last long." They ran again, turning corners through empty streets until they reached an old bridge. The Watchers' lights were behind them now, growing brighter. Lyra stopped suddenly and looked up at the sky. "They won't stop, John," she said sadly. "They'll keep coming." John caught his breath. "Then we don't stop either." She looked at him, her eyes full of both fear and gratitude. "You're strange," she said softly. "No one has ever fought for me before." John smiled faintly, even through the exhaustion. "Then it's about time someone did." They disappeared into the mist beyond the bridge, while the Watchers' voices echoed in the distance, searching for them like wolves in the dark. The road stretched endlessly through the forest, silent except for the sound of wet gravel under their shoes. The sky was still gray, heavy with clouds that never seemed to move. John and Lyra had been walking for hours, far away from the town and its empty streets. They finally stopped near an old wooden cabin hidden behind tall pine trees. It looked abandoned, windows broken, roof half collapsed, but it was shelter. John pushed the creaky door open, checked the inside, and nodded. "We can rest here for a while." Lyra stepped in quietly. The air smelled of dust and wood. She touched the wall gently, her glowing fingertips leaving faint blue marks. "This place is old," she said softly, "but it feels safe." John dropped his heavy bag to the floor and sat down on a broken chair. "Safe for now," he said, catching his breath. "But we need a plan. They're still out there." Lyra looked out the window at the quiet forest. "They won't stop," she whispered. "They never do." John studied her face and that mix of strength and sadness. He could see it in her eyes. She was carrying something much heavier than fear. Something she hadn't told him yet. He spoke gently. "Lyra, there's more, isn't there? Something you haven't said." She hesitated, her hands folding tightly in front of her. "If I tell you, you'll hate me," she said. John shook his head. "I've seen enough to know you're not the enemy, but I need to understand what's happening. Why are they hunting you? What's the truth?" Lyra turned away for a moment, staring out at the rain dripping from the trees. When she spoke, her voice was quiet but filled with pain. "My people once lived in peace," she began. "We were creators, dreamers, and healers. We built cities that floated in the sky and ships that could sail between the stars. But then came the Makers, beings from another world. They came with promises of power and protection. We trusted them." She paused, her voice trembling. "They lied." John leaned forward. "What did they do?" Lyra's glowing eyes dimmed. "They wanted soldiers, beings who could survive any war, never grow weak, never die. They took our brightest children and turned them into experiments. They used our own science against us. I was one of them." John's heart sank. "You mean, they made you?" She nodded slowly. "Half of me is theirs. Half of me still belongs to my people. I was built to destroy, to burn cities, to wipe out what was left of my own kind." John stared at her, speechless. The words hit him like a storm. Lyra continued, her voice breaking. "But when they gave me orders to kill, I couldn't. I remembered my mother's face and the way she used to sing to me when I was small. I remembered light, laughter, and the feeling of holding someone's hand. The things machines don't understand." She turned to him with tears shining in her blue eyes. "I ran away. I've been running ever since. And the ones chasing me now, and they are the others like me, the ones who obeyed. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The sound of the rain grew louder, filling the silence between them. John finally stood up and walked toward her. "You didn't ask to be made like that. None of this is your fault." Lyra shook her head slowly. "You don't understand. The power inside me, the light core, it's not stable. When it overloads, it destroys everything around it. That's why they want me back. Not to punish me, but to use me as a weapon." John felt a chill run through him. "So if they find you, they'll take the light from me," she said softly. "And use it to end worlds." John clenched his fists. "Then we'll make sure that doesn't happen." Lyra looked at him with disbelief. "You would stand against them? For me?" He nodded. "I don't care what you are, Lyra. You came to me for help. That means something." "I won't let them take you." Her lip trembled. "You shouldn't care so much," she said, almost in a whisper. "Humans, they always care too much. That's why the Makers fear you." John gave a small smile. "Then they're right to be afraid." Lyra smiled faintly through her tears. "You're strange, John." "Yeah," he said, sitting back down. "People tell me that a lot." Outside, the storm began to fade, but far away through the thick clouds, faint red lights flickered again, searching. Lyra's glow dimmed as she sat beside him. "They'll find us soon," she said quietly. "And when they do, I'll have to choose." John looked at her, confused. "Choose what?" She turned her head slowly, her expression heavy with sorrow. "Whether to fight them, or destroy myself before they can use me." The fire inside the cabin crackled softly, but the warmth couldn't stop the cold that filled John's heart. He didn't know how this story would end, only that he wasn't letting her face it alone. He reached out and placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "You're not alone anymore," he said. Lyra looked at him, her eyes shining softly. Maybe that's what scares them the most. The night came quietly over the forest cabin. A faint orange glow flickered from a small fire John had built using broken wood from the floor. The warmth filled the room, chasing away the chill. The two of them sat close to the fire, tired but awake, both lost in their thoughts. For the first time since she arrived on Earth, Lyra looked almost peaceful. The blue light beneath her skin pulsed softly like calm waves. She watched the flames with curious eyes, fascinated by the dancing colors. "This fire," she said quietly. "It feels alive?" John smiled. "In a way it is. It eats, it breathes, and it keeps us warm. Just don't feed it too much or it'll burn down everything." Lyra tilted her head slightly, thinking about his words. "It's strange," she said. "On my world we didn't have fire. We had light, pure energy, controlled and perfect. But it was cold. It didn't feel comforting like this." John poked the fire with a stick, watching sparks rise. "Maybe that's what makes humans different," he said softly. "We find warmth in the things that can destroy us." Lyra looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. "That's dangerous," he smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it's who we are." For a moment there was silence again, peaceful and almost normal. The kind of silence that made John forget for a few minutes that she wasn't human and that they were being hunted. After a while, Lyra broke the quiet. "John," she said softly, "why did you help me that night?" John looked up. "Because you asked me to." "But you didn't know me," she insisted. "I could have been lying. I could have hurt you." He shrugged lightly. "Maybe. But I saw fear in your eyes, not evil. You were running, not hunting, and sometimes that's all I need to know." Lyra looked down, a small, uncertain smile touching her lips. "On my world, we would have called that foolish." John chuckled. "Yeah, most people here would too." But Lyra didn't laugh. She stared into the fire again, her voice barely above a whisper. "Where I come from, kindness was the first thing they took from us." Her words hit John like a stone. He didn't know what to say, so he just sat beside her, letting the fire speak for them both. After some time, Lyra turned her gaze to the tools scattered on the floor. "What are you building?" John smiled a little. "A small distraction." He lifted a small metal device, something like a mix between a flashlight and a radio. "It's an old car battery rigged to overload. If those watchers come near, this thing will fry their sensors for a few seconds. Not much, but it might buy us time." Lyra's eyes widened. "You're using your technology to fight them?" He nodded. "Well, your kind has power. Mine has creativity. We make do with what we have." She looked impressed. "Your people. You always find a way." "That's what HFY stories are all about," John said with a grin. "Humanity freaking, yeah." Lyra blinked. "HFY," he laughed softly. "It means believing that humans, even without special powers, can do incredible things. Because of our hearts, not our strength." Lyra's expression softened. "I think I understand that now." The fire crackled louder and the wind outside whistled through the trees. Lyra moved a little closer, resting her arms around her knees. "When I was taken, I thought my life was over," she said quietly. "But then I saw you, standing in the dark, not running from me. And I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time." John looked at her carefully. "What's that?" "Hope," she said, her voice trembling slightly. John's chest tightened. He wanted to say something, anything, but words felt small compared to what he saw in her eyes. He finally whispered, "Then maybe that's worth fighting for." Lyra smiled, a real gentle smile this time. "Maybe it is." Outside, the forest shifted. A soft hum echoed faintly through the air, distant but familiar. Lyra stiffened. "They're searching again," she said. John quickly stood up, checking the window. "How far?" "Far enough for now," she answered. "But they'll come closer." "They always do," he nodded. "Then we'll be ready." Lyra stood beside him, the glow in her eyes turning bright again. "I won't let them hurt you, John." He looked at her, a small grin on his tired face. "And I won't let them take you." Their eyes met, human and alien, two lives tied together by chance, yet bound by something deeper, trust. As thunder rumbled faintly in the distance, the two of them stood in that old cabin, watching the shadows move outside. For now they had each other, a mechanic and a girl from the stars, two souls fighting against the cold, endless dark. And for the first time, Lyra no longer felt like she was running. She felt like she had found something worth stopping for. The next day broke with a pale golden light stretching across the forest. Mist floated between the trees, making everything look soft and unreal, but the peace was only on the surface. Underneath, the danger was closer than ever. John woke early. He had barely slept, but his mind refused to rest. He spent the morning checking the traps and small defense tools he'd made overnight. Metal scraps, wires, and homemade sensors placed around the cabin. Lyra stood near the window, her silver hair glowing faintly in the morning light. Her expression was calm, but her hands were folded tightly as if she was hiding her fear. "Did you feel them?" John asked quietly. She nodded once. "They're coming. From the east. There are at least 3 of them." John took a deep breath and tightened his jaw. "Then this is it." Lyra looked at him sadly. "You don't have to do this. They want me, not you." John shook his head. "I told you before. I don't walk away from someone who needs help." Lyra's eyes softened. "You are strange, John," she said gently. "Where I come from, people don't fight for others without reward." He gave a small smile. "Then I guess I'd fit right in with the crazy humans of your universe." For a moment, they shared a quiet laugh, but it faded quickly when the ground began to hum. A low vibration trembled under their feet. "They're here," Lyra whispered. John grabbed the small metal device he had built, a signal jammer. "When I press this, their scanners will fail for a few minutes," he said. "That's when we run." Lyra's voice was soft. "And if they don't fail?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The air outside shimmered as 3 watchers stepped out of the forest. Their black suits gleamed and their red eyes glowed like small fires. Their movements were slow, careful and mechanical, like shadows with a purpose. One of them spoke, his voice deep and hollow. "Lyra of the Corps, surrender. You cannot hide." Lyra's hands glowed blue, but John stopped her gently. "Not yet," he whispered. The watchers moved closer. The ground cracked under their heavy steps. John pressed the button. The jammer buzzed loudly, and for a second, just 1 second, the red lights in their eyes flickered. "Now," John shouted. He grabbed Lyra's hand and they ran into the trees. The forest was wet and slippery, but they didn't stop. Behind them, the watcher systems rebooted, their red eyes glowing again, brighter than before. "They're adapting," Lyra gasped. "The jammer won't work twice." Branches scratched their arms as they ran deeper into the woods. John's lungs burned, but he didn't slow down. Lyra's glow lit the path faintly ahead of them. Then, a sharp sound cut the air. A red beam shot past them, hitting a tree and bursting it into flames. "Keep moving," John yelled. Lyra turned and raised her hand. A wave of blue light burst from her palm, throwing one watcher backward, but the effort made her stumble. She fell to her knees, panting. John rushed to her side. "Come on, Lyra. We're almost there." She looked at him with teary eyes. "No," she said weakly. "You need to go." "If they catch you too." "Stop," John said firmly. "We started this together. We finish it together." Another blast hit the ground near them. Dirt and fire exploded into the air. The watchers were closing in. Lyra looked up, her blue glow flickering like a dying flame. "John," she whispered, "if they reach me, they'll use the light core. They'll destroy this world, your world." John shook his head. "Then we'll stop them, somehow." Tears filled her eyes. "There's only one way to stop them," she said quietly. "I have to end the core, and me with it." John froze. "No, there has to be another way." Lyra placed a trembling hand on his cheek. "You gave me something I never had before, a reason to care. A reason to fight. But now it's my turn to protect you, Lyra." Before he could finish, she stood up. Her glow brightened until the forest looked like daylight. The air around her hummed, and her hair lifted like silver fire. The watchers stepped closer, their red eyes burning through the smoke. Lyra whispered one last word. "Goodbye." The world exploded in light. A massive wave of blue energy swept through the trees, shattering the ground, dissolving the watchers into dust. The sound was deafening, a storm of light and power, wild and pure. John was thrown backward, crashing against a tree. When he opened his eyes, the forest was silent again. The air smelled of rain and electricity. He stumbled to his feet, calling her name. "Lyra, Lyra!" But there was no answer. In the middle of the clearing where she had stood, the ground was glowing softly, a small white crystal pulsing with light. John fell to his knees and picked it up carefully. It was warm, and inside it faintly he heard her voice. "Thank you for showing me what it means to be human." Tears filled his eyes as he held the crystal close. The wind brushed through the trees, carrying her light toward the sky. She was gone, but her warmth remained, not as a weapon, not as power, but as hope. The forest was quiet again. The bright light was gone. The rain had stopped. Smoke curled up from the ground, carrying the smell of burnt metal and wet earth. The world felt still, almost sacred, as if time itself had paused to watch what had just happened. John stood alone in the clearing, his clothes torn and covered in ash. His hands shook as he stared at the small glowing crystal resting in his palm, the only thing left of Lyra. It pulsed softly, like a tiny heartbeat, blue and gentle, alive but fragile. He whispered her name. "Lyra." The sound of his voice broke the silence. No answer came, just the faint hum of the crystal and the whisper of the wind through the trees. For a long time he didn't move. His mind was blank, his heart heavy. He had seen her sacrifice herself to save a world that wasn't even hers, a world that had barely welcomed her. And now she was gone. John sank to his knees, clutching the crystal to his chest. The light warmed his hands, comforting him somehow. It was like she was still there, watching, listening. "Why did you do it?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "You didn't have to. We could have found another way." The crystal glowed brighter for a moment, and in the softest, almost musical tone, a voice whispered back inside his mind, "Because you showed me that humans are worth saving." John froze. It was her voice, faint, distant, but full of peace. Tears blurred his vision. "Lyra," he said, "you didn't have to die to prove that." "I didn't die," her voice whispered. "I became light. That's what I was always meant to be." The glow in the crystal slowly dimmed again, returning to a calm, steady rhythm, like the beating of a peaceful heart. John stayed there until sunrise. When the first rays of morning light touched the trees, he finally stood up. He looked at the sky, bright and endless, and whispered, "I'll keep your light safe. I promise." Days passed. The government came to investigate the strange explosion in the forest. They found burnt ground, melted metal, and no signs of the mysterious machines. John was questioned, but he told them nothing. Who would believe him anyway? An alien girl from the stars who sacrificed herself for humanity? Instead, he kept her memory quiet, close to his heart. He rebuilt his workshop slowly, but it never felt the same. On his workbench, beside his old tools, he placed a small glass jar with the glowing crystal inside. Every night when the world went dark, the light from the crystal filled the room, gentle, blue, and alive. Sometimes, when the wind blew softly through the open window, he could almost hear her voice again. "Thank you for teaching me what it means to be human." Those words became a part of him. One evening, months later, John sat outside his workshop, staring at the stars. The sky was clear, millions of tiny lights scattered across the black sea of space. He held the crystal in his hand, watching it pulse faintly in rhythm with his heartbeat. He spoke quietly, as if she could still hear him. "You know, Lyra, I think humans aren't as great as you thought. We fight, we hurt, we break things we love. But maybe you were right about one thing: we care, and maybe that's enough." He smiled, tired but peaceful. Just then the crystal pulsed again, brighter than before. A beam of soft blue light rose from it, reaching toward the sky. John stood, watching in awe as the light spread across the stars. It was like a signal, not a weapon, not a warning, but a message. A message of hope. Across the night sky, stars flickered in response, one by one, as if answering her call. John felt his chest tighten with emotion. "You're not gone, are you?" he whispered. "You're out there, still watching." He smiled through his tears. "Good, keep watching. I'll keep your story alive down here." Years later, people began telling stories about that night, the night the forest glowed blue and the stars shined brighter than ever. Some said it was a meteor. Others said it was a secret experiment. But John knew the truth. It wasn't science or war. It was a girl from the stars, scared, kind, and brave, who trusted a human enough to believe in goodness again. Every night as he turned off the lights, John would look at the small glowing crystal and whisper the same words. "You weren't from Earth, but you made us more human." and far above, among the stars, a faint blue light always seemed to answer back.